Hey guys, JK95 here. Got a few stories to talk about and an endorsement I'd like to make. Where do I begin? So last week there was an arson attack at this animation studio in Japan called Kyoto Animation. 33 people died, scores more were injured, and I'd like to share my thoughts on that and a few other things and why I have officially decided to endorse the hashtag NoNotoriety campaign. Before I continue with why I'm endorsing the NoNotoriety campaign, here's what the NoNotoriety campaign is about. It's about changing journalistic standards because whenever a mass casualty incident occurs and the attacker comes from certain backgrounds, mainly Islamic backgrounds, Asperger's backgrounds, Hispanic backgrounds, immigrant backgrounds, etc., the media, what they like to do is turn the suspect into like a celebrity for anywhere from 5 days to a month or more, depending on the nature of their crime. And they have these quote-unquote experts going on and on and on about like how the shooter came to be a certain way and blaming everything from like video games, anime, in the case of Asperger shooters, and using the words Asperger's and incel in the same sentence, which inceldom is a horribly misogynistic movement that being conflated with Asperger's syndrome by the US media, and which I myself have Asperger's syndrome, and while I have not had a girlfriend yet, I am not an incel and want nothing to do with that movement, as the incel movement likes to blame women for rejecting them and blame sexually attractive guys for stealing the girls that they feel entitled to, which I am completely against and want no part of this kind of movement. And I think it's wrong that whenever somebody with Asperger's commits a crime, they start conflating Asperger's and inceldom and using the two in the same sentence, and then they go off and blame the video game and anime industries in particular for making men more violent and making men more misogynistic, when I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. This kind of style of reporting inspires copycats who would normally be spending their days on websites like 4chan, Reddit, Telegram, and on like all these other hardcore hate sites to get off the computer and into the real world. Basically they see the news coverage of like this mass casualty incident and they're like, hey, that guy got infamous doing that sort of thing, thinking that if they can replicate what they did like 10 to 1,000-fold, that they'll get that same level of media infamy and notoriety. And it's the same thing with like mass casualty attackers from Islamic backgrounds too. Like when somebody from an Islamic background commits a mass casualty act, they immediately start smearing an entire world religion with 1.8 billion followers worldwide who come from many different ethnicities and backgrounds that range from Black African, blue-eyed blonde, East Asian, everything in between. And they start blaming like the Quran, saying that like certain passages condone terrorism, forced conversions, sex slavery, female genital mutilation, honor killings, etc., etc., and that like they get 72 virgins for slaughtering infidels, which not true at all. I've read the whole thing cover to cover, and not only is none of that true, but I found the Quran to be somewhat less violent and significantly less misogynistic than the Bible, and most of the quote-unquote violence in it is for a specific place and time and directed at specific groups of people that are not around today. But I'm going to save that for another video because I gotta get back to how NoNotoriety ties into the things I'm going to talk about and why I've decided to endorse the NoNotoriety campaign and actively support it. So the way the Japanese media handled the Kyoto animation fire was that they did not name the suspect or show any pictures of them. All they said was that it was a 41-year-old man who yelled "die" as he set the fire. And this was according to a witness who had encountered the suspect, and the suspect was taken into police custody. That's how the Japanese media handled the incident. CNN, on the other hand, they started talking about how the anime industry is male dominated and caters to men, and how Kyoto Animation was the exception, and how they employed more women and had more women writers there. Kyoto Animation produced Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, which the English dub has been accused of inserting a feminist agenda into someone else's work by various male viewers in the States. But as a result of that, and other animes like Prison School and Hajimete no Gal have been accused of the same thing by these same people, which I know for sure that if they were shoving an anti-Islamic, anti-Arab, anti-immigrant, anti-Palestinian agenda into someone else's work, these same people would not be complaining and would be supporting Funimation if they did that instead of inserting a quote-unquote feminist agenda into someone else's work. But here are some of the other reasons why I'm endorsing NoNotoriety. Lately, I've been seeing commercials for Quentin Tarantino's new movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, about the Manson crime family and the murder sprees that they committed. And that's another reason why I'm endorsing NoNotoriety, because it seems to me that Quentin Tarantino is trying to turn a dark and terrible chapter of LA history into something to be glorified and something comedic, judging by the commercials, which the Manson family should not be glorified for any reason whatsoever. And Charles Manson died either last year or the year before in prison, and good riddance to him, and good riddance to anybody else in the Manson family who passes and days behind bars. But don't get me wrong, I loved Quentin Tarantino's Kill Bill series. I watched Kill Bill Volume 1 and Kill Bill Volume 2. That was amazing. I loved Uma Thurman's role in that film. I watched Pulp Fiction once, couldn't get into it, found it a little boring. But I'm not watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. What happened to you, Quentin Tarantino? What happened? So, long story short, the media coverage of mass casualty incidents like the Kyoto animation fire that happened last weekend and the Virginia Beach workplace shooting that happened a couple months ago is the reason why I'm endorsing NoNotoriety, along with movies like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and how whenever a person with Asperger's, a Muslim, an immigrant, person of color commits a mass casualty spree, that they end up becoming a celebrity for anywhere from a few days to a month or more. And that kind of reporting style just inspires all of the copycats to come out of the woodwork to try and replicate that. A few months ago, there was a mass shooting in Virginia Beach at this government building where a guy shot and killed 12 of his coworkers he had a beef with. And the Virginia Beach PD made a vow only to name the suspect once, and from there on out start referring to them as the shooter or the suspect, and not publishing any images of them, and made a plea to the U.S. media companies to do the same. But spoiler alert, they did not. CNN plastered the guy's face all over screens as usual, repeated the shooter's name 3,000 times, and that kind of reporting just inspires the worst of society to come out of the woodwork. And in 2018, after the Parkland massacre and the school massacre in Great Mills, which is an hour away from where I live, the Federal School Safety Commission, a government agency, said that the best way to prevent school shootings and other workplace shootings and other acts of terror is for the media to adopt the NoNotoriety campaign. That's saying something right there. Congrats to the Japanese media for the way they handled the Kyoto animation fire, and for not naming the suspect or posting any images of them and plastering it all over the screens. Shame on you, CNN, for trying to politicize mass tragedies and exploiting mass tragedies to scapegoat entire races, world religions, social groups, etc., etc. And here's another example of why I'm endorsing NoNotoriety. Back in like either April or May, like in the French town of Lyon, some guy rode a bicycle past a bakery, dropped a package next to it, and the package exploded, injuring like 13 different people. Nobody died, thank God. And the French media, here's how they handled it. They did not name the suspect because he was taken alive, and all they said was that he was a 24-year-old Algerian on a student visa and was not known to the authorities. And the only image we saw of the attacker was from the security cam footage of the incident, which showed the attacker was on a bike, had a pair of Bermuda shorts, a tank top, and a ski mask on, and some sunglasses or something. And the French media, that's all we know about the guy who did drop that package. 24-year-old Algerian on student visa, not known to the authorities. Only image we saw was from the security cam footage, and he doesn't look like a stereotypical jihadi terrorist at all. And then there was another incident in London where like this lesbian couple were attacked on like a city bus or something, and they did not release the security cam footage or name any of the suspects because all the suspects were under 18 at the time, meaning that and in many countries, including the US, it's kind of a crime to name suspects under 18, even though it's not always enforced. But the thing that really pisses me off, though, is like, congrats to the French media for the way they covered the Lyon parcel bomb incident. But the New York Times, however, said that the Lyon attacker had made a video swearing allegiance to the so-called Islamic State group, aka ISIS, and to their leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. And shame on you, New York Times, and congrats to the European media for the way they covered that incident on the London bus and in Lyon at that bakery. And congrats to the Japanese media for the way they handled the Kyoto animation fire. But shame on you, CNN. Shame on you, New York Times. If you ask me, CNN and the New York Times should both be forced to register as foreign agents. I'll explain why in another video. So there you have it. The reason why I'm endorsing the NoNotoriety project is to get the news media to stop turning violent criminals from certain backgrounds into celebrities for anywhere from a few days to a month or more, so that they can smear entire ethnic groups, religions, social groups, etc., and inspire copycats to come out of the woodwork, replicate that so that they can keep the cycle of violence and ratings bonanza going up and up and up. And good job to the Japanese, French, and British media for the way they handled the Kyoto animation fire, the Lyon parcel bomb incident, and the homophobic attack on that couple in London. Shame on you, CNN. Shame on you, New York Times. One last thing I'd like to add before I close out this video, that another thing I noticed the media does, and another reason why I endorse NoNotoriety, is that they tend to really gloss over white mass murderers and white violent criminals unless they have Asperger's syndrome. Like, for example, with the 2017 Las Vegas shooting, that guy was a 64-year-old white guy who did not have Asperger's, was not a Muslim. He killed like 58 people, injured 500 more from his hotel window, and they claim that they never found a motive for that. I don't buy that for 1 second. I think that the real reason they claim they didn't find a motive is that because he's white, doesn't have Asperger's, not a Muslim, and was probably a conservative. And that's another reason why I'm endorsing NoNotoriety. I'd be willing to bet money that if Ted Bundy were alive today, his serial killings would not make it past the local news because he was white, didn't have Asperger's, not a Muslim, and I don't have much else to say. Well, that is it for today, folks. I'm hoping to get more videos out in the coming days and weeks as I near my 100th video. And for those of you who haven't heard already, I am releasing my first mixtape on SoundCloud and YouTube exactly 3 months from today, either at 8 p.m. sharp, or if I get off work in time, 3:11 p.m. sharp, because that's my exact time of birth. That's it for today, folks. JK95 here. Peace out.